What is up, everybody? This is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook live stream where we will be talking about reservation dogs and ancestresses, uh, ancestors, uh, ancestresses. That's what that means. Looking at the word now, I might have chosen a different word. Anyways, I can't even read the words that I've written down into my YouTube video title, but we're talking about reservation dogs, ancestresses, and how sometimes the most powerful thing that you can do is remember who you are among superpowered invaders built on forgetting everything. Spiralic temporality, indigeneity, and reservation dogs. So, before I forget, just quick shout out. Do watch Reservation Dogs if you haven't yet. Um, it's like it's to me, it's like the most important show I would say on TV right now, or out. Generally speaking, it's as I've commented before. It's basically the best, the funniest show I've seen in about 10 years, and it's like the best show that represents indigenous people. I mean, I'm a native Hawaiian, so this is of course, uh, full disclosure, that does have personal impact on my life, and as well as it's extra important to me for that reason, being an indigenous person. But it's like the best show in terms of representing indigenous people ever made, I think. And there's a lot of good shows. We just recently watched Smoke Signals in the past few months. There's of course, there's like the Whale Riders. You have your not so good indigenous centered shows like Pocahontas. But, Reservation Dogs is like the best to my mind. It's the most like expansive, thorough, and the most like accurate, multi-dimensional picture and visualization that really explores like what it means to be an indigenous person in the actual planet Earth. Particularly, this is like dealing with kids in the area of what's called Oklahoma, in their reservation, but it's really more universal than just the experiences as a indigenous person in Oklahoma. It applies to, of course, Turtle Island, but it really, I'm in Hawaii, which is in the Pacific. It's a very different place. It also applies to experiences, I think, to Aotearoa, New Zealand, and many other places, because the experiences of indigenous people under the processes of colonization are not particular. They're much more universal. They're actually planetary, and they're not. They don't all. They're not all identical. They're not carbon copies of each other. In South America, in East Asia, South Asia, in Africa, but they do rhyme, and they have many deep similarities, and there's really more in common with peoples in Africa and Asia, all the Americas, than the Pacific under that period, than they have in common, with a lot of the colonizers. In terms of actual lived experiences, you might be speaking English or Spanish. In South America, you might be speaking more Spanish as an indigenous person, as a Quechua person in, let's say, Bolivia, and you might be speaking English as a Cherokee person in Arizona or another state. But like the actual experiences that you're having, even though you're speaking different languages, you have like completely different history books, right? History books. We're going to get to that. Given to you by the occupiers, but the actual experiences of being considered like kind of outside of the mainstream, normal, so-called universal culture, being having your ways and your dress, just being eternally kind of confused and in between multiple worlds, because inside the house, your parents, your family, your community are handing down these rituals. Sometimes a lot of the indigenous languages were banned, but secretly there's still parents trying to pass down the language, and culture to kids, and so that experience is like universal. It's everywhere, because colonization, like, it's hard to kind of like really over. It's hard to overemphasize that point, because colonization happened everywhere on Earth, right? Out of 100, just with one European entity, the British Empire alone, touched 90+% of all countries on Earth. There's only 20 countries. There's like 200 countries, and only around 20 countries were never colonized or semi-colonized, invaded, occupied, etc. You just take one country, India alone. India did not speak English, right? 1 billion people. That's 1/7 of the entire human species did not speak English, and now they do. And many of them as their primary language. Many of them still, as I was speaking to Nigel Cherian, who is a diaspora person from India, specifically Kerala, in so-called Canada, right? Now he said, like, actually in India, much of the Indian people look up to and think fondly upon their British colonization, which is, sort of kind of Stockholm syndrome of 1 billion people. But coming back to that point, that's 1 billion people who don't speak their native language, or they still have their native language, but as a norm, they all speak English, or they're all speaking English, as a result of colonization, when they did not before, right? And it's not like that's already, right, a huge impact on all those people. And some of them don't, as Nigel was pointing out, they don't even realize how deep that colonization has, like, warped their minds and their perceptions of what is modern, civil, what is good. Britishness is considered good. Even as they've decolonized, they're still not fully decolonized in that sense, in economic senses, and But it's like, so that's 1 billion people, right? Even in China, that's another 1 billion people. That's 1/5 of the Earth's population. Right, you put India and China together, that's like nearly half of the human. In the other Asian, ASEAN region, that's half or more than half of the Earth, right? And they have a similar experience, even though China was not occupied, right, in the way that Turtle Island is much more severely decimated. Indigenous people more severely decimated in terms of the land being taken, the populations being massively decreased, wiped out, the resources and the wealth being stripped, the children literally being taken, and languages being banned, cultures being banned, mass incarceration, etc., etc. So in Turtle Island, so you went from tens of millions to 2% of the population in a place like the United States being indigenous, and 98% approximately being about 70% being white or Euro, and then about 98% considering themselves American, or part of the colonizer, not indigenous. Although that's kind of shifting now, but in China you have, or Vietnam and China actually have, in that sense, a little bit similar. Vietnam was only ever maybe 2%. 2% of the population were settler colonizers. The French in particular in Vietnam. In China, there was some British. Hong Kong was a British colony. Taiwan was a Dutch colony. Native Hawaiians like myself are related to them, and so in China they had Macau is a Portuguese colony, and there are several others, of course, that they've had some amount of. Of course, it's far less in terms of total numbers, but they've had some amount of outside invaders come in. Certainly in terms of like economic, military, and political suppression, right? They've had that in China. And in terms of they have some amount of settler colonization. Some of the strongest is in Hong Kong. I was just reading that in Hong Kong, the Chinese are now asking to remove, they still have to say, in formal government proceedings and in schools, and they have to speak about the British monarchy as the head of Hong Kong. Let me see if I can find that one. Hong Kong remove It just today. Yeah. So there was that news. I forget. Let me see on that. What really drove them after? No, that's not. That's not really what I want. There was a specific tweet about one of the, I think it's one of the politicians in Hong Kong was basically saying we don't want to have to acknowledge the Queen of England as a leader of Hong Kong, because they still have to do that, right? It's like, even though technically Hong Kong was given back to China, it's not a British possession anymore. The British are still upset about that as colonizers. But my point is that I'm kind of getting off track. Is that the like in terms of actual occupation, Hong Kong had that. They were subjugated, people killed, people made to be servants, servile, cooks and cleaners and chefs, and they could be killed at whim by the British occupiers. They had no democracy whatsoever in Hong Kong. And so, and so that, and all of China went from the world's largest economy in 1800s, early 1800s. China's economy was 30 times the size of Britain. Within less than a century, Britain surpassed China, right? So the economic and political power, and the military suppression China had experienced, certainly, right? It's a tiny island with less than 1/10 the population of China, somehow, right, grabbing and colonizing or semi-colonizing, certainly economically colonizing China, making the vast quantities of wealth that the European powers made, the colonizers made, was on the backs of narco trafficking, the opium wars, and taking resources and wealth and silk tea, etc., and storing it in London. A lot of that coming out of the wealthiest country in the world at that time, and the most popular and the most populous also, it still is, China. So and on top of African colonization, plunder, and slavery, and which the British were the number one slave beneficiaries, enslaving people. And then, of course, the Americas, right? And so the colonization process is like not exactly the same, not to the same severity everywhere, but in all the continents, Asia, Africa, Latin America, all the Americas, and the Pacific, it's all been experienced, and it's universal. So I want to kind of open with that, because we're going to have a panel later on today. And in that panel, we're going to be... in that panel, we're going to be discussing these topics. It's not the only topic we're going to talk about, but I'm just trying to lead in this because I'm going to do advertising from my other events. No, later on today at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Luna Oi's channel. Our speaking of Asia and colonization, our Vietnamese friend, comrade, and content creator extraordinaire Luna will be hosting a discussion about the West from a Black, Indigenous, and person of color perspective. I think one of the people, unfortunately, is having an emergency. Chaos's Mel is I think might not be with us, but we would have loved to have Mel, who is trans and Korean diaspora inside of the United States. Saber is African, or I believe Pan-African is what they identify as, and Black in the UK, essentially, in the United Kingdom. Wasu is Indigenous in so-called Canada, if I'm not mistaken. Luna is Vietnamese in Vietnam, and I am, of course, Native Hawaiian in illegally U.S.-occupied Hawaii. So we're going to have a discussion about all of this global perspective of that history of colonization and how that relates to the continued problems of racism, capitalism, climate, environment, how monarchy and feudalism, right? I made a game called Neofeud, of course, that deals directly with the intersections and interplay and fabricated differences between feudalism and capitalism, I would argue. But anyways, we'll talk about feudalism because we're going to have somebody who is in the UK watching the passing funeral of the continued monarch and most politically powerful and economically powerful entity in the UK, despite their attempts to cover their continued feudalism and capitalism and colonialism. Of it's, and so that's all going to come into play later on today. And let's get back to Reservation Dogs though. So sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remember who you are among superpowered invaders built on forgetting everything. So I kind of went about how like this is a universal story. Like, of course, I'm not indigenous to the Central Turtle Island part where this show is set. It's in Oklahoma. Just a little bit of context on that. Just gonna get the Reservation Dogs. We'll just do IMDb. I haven't clicked on that one in a while. So Reservation Dogs is a comedy about 4 Native American teenagers growing up on a reservation in eastern Oklahoma. I mean, ostensibly, it's about a lot more than that, but let's see, can I get the with a wild Taika? It's also co-produced by Taika Waititi and Sterling Harjo, who are Sterling Harjo is indigenous from that region, Oklahoma, and Taika Waititi is indigenous Maori from Aotearoa / New Zealand. The Maori are the indigenous people of New Zealand are trying to get that name also shifted back to the original name, which is Aotearoa. As I like to bring up, calling New Zealand is like calling Hawaii the Sandwich Isles, right? Also, calling Hawaii the state of Hawaii is also similar to calling New Zealand, but it's New Zealand is it is a place in Europe, right? That was named. Whenever you see a new something, that's a symbol that is a place of extreme oppression and genocide. Because to call a place when it's a European language and it's saying it's a new this, it's saying there's a place in this land that we are invading that's very similar in Europe, right? New York, New Brunswick. There's actually sometimes they just rename it. Like Kent is a region, it's a county in British Columbia in what's called Canada, which resembles the landscape in a British region called Kent. I know this because my partner's from so-called Canada. But anyways, all of these different, whenever you see a new something, right? New Zealand, so like Zealand, right? Is a Danish region, right? Largest and most populous island in Denmark, right? So when you call it New Zealand, what you're doing is you're saying that this place is a lot like this other place that we have, and we're gonna invade it, take over it, crush the people, take the resources, take the land, etc. Benefit massively economically, and we're going to just pretend like it's another one of our areas. We're gonna install our language, we're gonna install our culture, we're gonna install our ways, right? And so New Zealand itself, right, where Taika Waititi is from, is also the entire name of it is continued erasure of the indigenous population, right? For them, the name of it is Aotearoa. For Hawaii, it's obviously it was the Sandwich Isles, right, under the British Empire. The Hawaiians had to actually fight to kind of get the name even renamed from the Sandwich Isles to Hawaii, right? That itself is already a success, because there's another place called New Zealand that shouldn't be called New Zealand. It's called New Zealand because of colonization. There are places like American Samoa. Why is American Samoa? What gives America the right to take over that place? Nothing except for a colonial experience and a colonial oppression, right? Why is there French Tahiti, right? Why do the Tahitians speak French, right? They speak French for the same reason, right? Everywhere, it's French Tahiti, Spanish South America, and Anglo North America. All of that is part of the Anglo India, right? So you see, it's very. If you look at it in a certain sense, that's the unique thing about China. China still speaks Chinese, right? India all speaks English. Tahiti speaks French. People in Hawaii speak English. Now we're trying to relearn language. I'm not to say that you can't be bilingual. That's like a thing that would be kind of, it's a norm. You have like more universal languages, but you also, you have like your local ancestral languages as well, right? And that's still the norm in China. But China, everyone still speaks Chinese, right? So that's like the total colonization in terms of cultural, social, economic, political impact. At least on the cultural angle, which is very important, language is very important, is a lot less. That and when it comes to consumption of global capitalist superpower hegemonic influence and Western media that they weaponize, that puts kind of China in another boat. It also makes it harder for them to interact because the 1.4 billion don't interact very much in English. It does make it harder for them to interact with the Western world and counter narratives, I would argue. But it does give them other advantages because then they have access to their own language and their own culture in a way that both India and a lot of Hawaii and a lot of indigenous people in the Americas and the rest of the world don't, because of the language and cultural erasure. But anyways, so the whole ensemble are remarkable. It feels trendy, but I come way off topic. Taika Waititi in Reservation Dogs arrives at a fully formed concept, giving a sharp caricature of contemporary native culture with buckets of wit, personality, and sincerity. The whole ensemble here are remarkable, and it feels tremendously fresh in its efforts to cram everything in right out the gate, or perhaps due to circumstances during filming. There are an abnormal amount of bottle episodes that confuse the central narrative, drive a little, something other comedies may have often felt confident in doing in their third or fourth series, but West Dogs has few contemporaries and the characters are easily strong enough to make this otherwise alienating move work. And it's just some random person's review, so I'm not, I wouldn't take that as like this is the authoritative, definitive, final answer from super intelligent Type 8 Kardashevian civilization aliens observing Earth and all of its culture. That's me. That when I say things, it's absolutely definitive. It's more authoritative than Wikipedia, Dictionary.com, and the State Department narrative combined. Anyways, anything is more authoritative than all of those things. But Reservation Dogs and Ancestresses, though. So Reservation Dogs is a show that centers these kids. Willie Jack, the main character in this particular episode, is one of the 4 reservation dogs who is trying to I recommend you watch the show. I'm gonna jump into the story a little bit. Try not to spoil it too much, but in the season 1, right, of Reservation Dogs, you have these 4 indigenous kids. It's a year since one of their good friends passed. They are one of their friends died tragically, and in a lot of the ways they say that kind of it was the reservation that killed their friend, right? It is the area they're in, which is full of poverty. It's full of it does have poverty. It does have like rundown conditions. They do have food deserts. They do have a lot of problems that indigenous people suffer. Poisoned or not so clean water. Like in Hawaii, we're drinking military jet fuel still. So so in Reservation Dogs at the beginning, they are trying to where's the Flamin' Flamers? Trying to find Flamin' Flamers. Yeah. So in Reservation Dogs episode 1, season 1, they are going on a heist to steal a delivery truck full of like 10,000 high capsaicin content cornmeal and hydrogenated soybean oil product, also called hot Cheetos. I'm sorry, Flaming Flamers, because they didn't have a deal with Cheetos. But anyways, Flamin', unlike Peacemaker, with Judo Master munching down giant gobfuls of hot Cheetos. Anyways, Flamin' Flamers is a hot it's like a junk food snack, but they get like a whole truck full. They steal the truck, right? That's why it's Reservation Dogs, of course, a reference to Reservoir Dogs, right? About a bunch of gangsters doing crimes, doing heists in California. Filmed by Tarantino, obviously. and they dress like the Rat Pack. They dress like the Reservoir Dogs in the first episode. But they're indigenous kids. They're gonna do this. They're gonna do this heist, steal this truck. I mean, it's not a very big. It's not like they're gonna make millions of dollars from this, right? This is not like it, but it's kind of a play on Western Hollywood cinema. It's kind of like, and the kids are watching these movies, right? The main character, one of the main characters, Elora Danan, is named after the fantasy movies protagonist of the movie Willow, right? Elora Danan is like one of the main character of Willow, who her Gen X or actually millennial, old millennial, it's like my age. Her mom, Elora Danan, who is a teenager, her mom is my age, and so she would have named her kid after movies she was watching. Like I think the most popular name on the Google baby names list is Daenerys, circa the height of the popularity of Game of Thrones, the most pirated TV show in the history of the human species so far. I don't know if the House of the Dragon is gonna catch up to that, but and so like Daenerys Targaryen is a popular name. So I mean, in essence, it's like it's very real though, because that's as I pointed out, like last year I did a video about Reservation Dogs. Like that's the kind of culture that indigenous people consume, right? Now, like, Neofeud is full of Terminator. There's John Connor robotized, who is also an ex-con and a professional drug dealer who has a Mega Buster for an arm and wears an Optimus Prime gold necklace and wants to be a $6 billion baller, and that's his MC handle and his Instagram tag, because that's the culture that Native Hawaiians like myself are given and exposed to. Like, it's that's a part of the process is. And not even if you were not colonized, you might still have cultural exchanges across the planet. There's no like monocultural. Everyone only practices their individual ways as, like special, sacred, spelled SACRIT. So sacred, as one of my indigenous relatives was saying. We're not all just like all day long. Taika Waititi, as he said when he's talking about Reservation Dogs, the point is not like part of the point of Reservation Dogs is that indigenous people. Like this is one of the answers. We're not all day long, right? Communing with ancestors. We don't wear feather headdresses and ritual ceremonial beadwork and feather work. And Hawaiians are not always in grass skirts all day. Like, we just that number one, that's a Western Hollywoodized for mass liberal consumption. For mass colonizer consumption, depiction of indigenous people, right? Now, indigenous people do wear those kinds of clothes on certain times at certain days, but that's not a thing that. And number one, and the way that Hollywood has depicted indigenous people, native people of Turtle Island, Native Americans, is as Plains Indians specifically. But there's lots of different indigenous people. Like a lot of them have, like in that image, you can see there's these are the ancestors, right, of one of the Reservation Dogs. There's a lot, some of them have these certain hats, right? Actually none of them have feather headdresses, right? Now they have different patterns. They have certain different kind of distinguishing jewelry. One thing is like there's certain like color patterns in the clothing. The beadwork, it shows up often, right? But everybody doesn't look like, cowboys and Indians, right? Which is what or even Pocahontas Indians, right, in the Disneyfied 90s sense, which none of like that's very much a that is the invaders kind of a human museum cinematic museum boxification of us, right? To put us in a box that says like, this is what indigenous people look like. And what indigenous people do, what Native Americans do is they say how, and they say some kind of wise saying. And these are jokes. And there's a casino they go to or some like Indian store they go to, and you can like put a 50 cents into a gumball machine like turnstile, and it will give you an Indian phrase and say, yes, the grass grows green and bright under the the strong sun, and put another 2 coins to hear more sacred wisdom. And it's kind of like that's the conception. That's what the and that's a place for tourists passing through Oklahoma or whatever state to consume indigeneity, or when you put on your feather headdress for Halloween, which you shouldn't be doing because that's horrible cultural appropriation. That's indigeneity as another McDonald's product, right? It's like indigeneity as another flavor of Disney. It's literally another flavor of Disney movie Pocahontas, right? To sell lunchboxes with Pocahontas on them, to the detriment and the continued impoverishment of the indigenous people, who you're putting that white capitalist colonizers who own Disney are benefiting from Disney Corporation. Ask Abigail Disney. She just put a special lot about how nice they treat even their white employees at the Disney parks who live disproportionately in their cars and eat cans of tuna fish for dinner. Food insecurity is like over 50% among Disney employees. But anyways, it's the saddest place on earth to work. But so it benefits a handful of people, and it doesn't actually even benefit the masses of the descendants of the invaders in Turtle Island. And and it commodifies all of the indigenous culture and it sells it. And so a lot of Reservation Dogs is like kind of you having to unpack and take the unpacked indigenous commodified nuggets and then skewer them and roast them all. There's a lot to roast. There's much feasting and banquets of Eurocentric conceptions of indigeneity. The Germans have their own misconceptions of that as well as do other European cultures who the Italians have their own in their spaghetti westerns, which are kind of plagiarizations of American disinformation campaigns, right? Which are all the John Wayne and Clint Eastwood movies, which are about the global white supremacist capitalist hegemon fighting communism, actually, by centering strong, straight, cis white men on a horse, killing indigenous people, decentering unions, erasing the history of black and brown people as the majority people who are actual cowboys, and also furthering the indigenous people were savages and America deserves this land narratives. So anyways, but I'm like way off topic, but but Reservation Dogs, like, it does kind of come back and try to actually deal with that kind of thing. Whereas Big, one of the characters, Big, in Reservation Dogs is a let me see, Big in Reservation Dogs. Big is played by Zan McClarnon, who is also in the Hawkeye show. Big is the light horseman for the indigenous people's enforcement department. Mostly his job consists of rapping on the doors of meth heads and getting them to stop destroying their frontal cortex and stealing copper from the fixtures and the plumbing and the electrical power lines, and then also going around and stopping Sagat from Street Fighter 2. The actor who plays Sagat or Sagat from the movie Street Fighter 2, another indigenous actor, what's his name? Copper guy maker in Reservation Dogs. There's this guy, benefits of copper. This is just a PSA in the middle of this Reservation Dogs review. Benefits of copper: fights diseases like cholera, wards off bad spirits, freaks out your neighbors. Everyone's reading string theory in Reservation Dogs and talking about the unified supersymmetry of the multiverse and the omniverse, and then after they read that book, they start making copper oscillating sine waves on their forehead and making two penised 3-inch tall copper guys and placing them all over all over the front doorsteps and the dashboards of their neighbors. And anyways, the point of that is this character. It's very funny. This character is this actor, and Holly has his name because I forgot it. Is he's a famous indigenous actor, and he's playing the character. What's his name? Wes Studi, right? Yeah, Wes Studi plays this character who is, he's kind of freaking out his neighbors, putting down his little copper dudes around. He's just kind of being weird. And he's like, stop weeding. Everybody's getting weird by you, weirded out. And so the Light Horseman, in Reservation Dogs, played by Big, who is also in Marvel's cinematic universe show Hawkeye. Unfortunately, he plays a criminal. That's a good example of this kind of like, pigeonholization and one-dimensionality of the non-white characters and the non-representation of the non-white characters, which includes indigenous characters, in mainstream Western pop culture, entertainment, movies, games, TV shows, etc. Big's character in, I think, Big Reservation Dogs actor. So Big's character, Dan McLaren, in Hawkeye. So in Hawkeye, right? In Hawkeye, this indigenous actor, he shows up, right? Which is better than nothing. Zan Tokiaku McLaren portrayed William Lopez in Hawkeye, and in Echo. Yeah. And he's a bad guy. He's a criminal. They're criminal because they have long hair. They look like they play in a metal band. They have a choker and a leather jacket, and that means that they're like probably bad. No, that means that they're just like not adhering to Western cultural Nazi norms. Anyways, now that we're 3 episodes into Marvel's high entertaining Hawkeye series, fans want to know more about William Lopez actor. So he shows up and he dies like pretty early on, and he's just kind of like a bad guy, and it's either like kind of like there's a non-white person, he's just kind of a bad guy. Oh, there's a black person, he's a cop and he does cop things. Usually he's a good cop because most Western media is propaganda to reinforce the knights of neo-feudalism, or the violence doers of coercion required capitalism. And so anyways, so you either have like black people often play cops, indigenous people either play like very sacred, just kind of caricatures of themselves, like in Pocahontas, painting with all the colors of the wind. They kind of play the drunken Indian, just burnt out husks that are almost gone and probably all gone, and that's sad, right? The last of the Mohicans suggests that the Mohicans are gone because that was the last one, and it's kind of like you can cry white tears for this guilt that you try to misplace, and then you feel a little bit of it when you watch these indigenous people. It's a trauma porn, right? It's kind of like, it's either you cry, or if you're mask off, if you're just a mask off white supremacist, you're just celebrating that they're all dead, right? Like some people watch Black Lives Matter, black people being killed to get off on it because they're like, yay, the great white race is getting rid of all of the black and brown people in the United States, right? By kneeling on their neck and shooting them in the street as a police officer, or as Ahmaud Arbery's killers who jumped out of a truck and then started blowing him away with a shotgun and got away with it, and would have still got away with it, and thousands more continue to get away with it, right? So it's kind of like either you're in there, but it's like it's trauma porn. So black indigenous people of color are there to serve as trauma pornography, to celebrate for mask off racists and fascists and conservatives, or to shed some tears about for liberals, but then they don't do anything and think that their guilt is absolved because they've gone through the process of feeling kind of bad for things that their ancestors did and that they continue to benefit from. And then there's the progressive and left that like they go, wow, we have to maybe try to do something about that. And I hope that we can do something about that. But it's always like it's like it's still the point is that whatever way indigenous people are depicted, it's not we're not depicted for as complete human beings, right? We're not depicted as people who live in the modern world, right? Like I'm a native Hawaiian, and I'm also an artificial intelligence programmer. I'm a game developer. I'm an artist. I spend a lot of time working on fixing roofs, like they do it in Reservation Dogs as well. Gardening, teaching kids, streaming, doing lots of things. Like we and I'm just one, right? There's other Native Hawaiians who my brother does more time doing education. He spends a lot more time tree trimming. I got a cousin who's in the military and he pilots drones and F-22s, and I wish that he would stop, and that's another thing indigenous people do. Unfortunately, I mean, I prefer that we would not do that, but it's like to survive like other people who live inside of the empire of the United States. They work for the military and for giant corporations to survive, and that's the thing that indigenous people end up doing under colonization. We don't spend all day. You see what I'm trying to say, right? But that's like a thing that if you just watched Hollywood movies, if you just watched just movies and TV shows generally produced by the West, right, in English and Spanish and French, you could assume that to be indigenous, it means to be like Pocahontas, or it means to be like it's like Pocahontas, or it's like what is it, Last of the Mohicans, or to be indigenous, it's just to it's gonna be like one of those sad drunken Indians who are it's just sad and depression and trauma, and that's all there is to it. And there is, of course, right, but it's always one dimensional, right? And so Reservation Dogs is a show, and I think like was it not Bridgerton? Rutherford Heights, is that the one? There's a couple shows, but Reservation Dogs is, to me, it's still, I think, the best because, and it makes a big difference because it is Reservation Dogs is written by indigenous people. It is produced by indigenous people, Taika Waititi and Sterling Harjo, and it's also of course it's centered on the reservation and indigenous people, and it's really made for indigenous people. There's a lot of things that they're like in Reservation Dogs as another example of why it's not for a Western gaze. It's not for a white othering viewer, for their consumption, right? Reservation Dogs, it has pixelated owl eyes. So the if I don't know, Janet Jackson gets her top removed because she has female presenting nipples, obviously. They get blurred out, and we have TOS violation on Twitch as well. And the pixelation is a censored image. So all the owls in Reservation Dogs have let me see if I can get a picture of that. Yeah, all the owls in Reservation Dogs have censored blurred out eyes, right? And the reason why they have censored blurred out eyes, it's not explained. You just have to go, oh, that owl has its eyes blurred out, or what even is that, right? Let's see. Yeah, it's a video tweet. I don't want to get in trouble, but I think it'll be okay. And so yeah, the owl witness relocation program is apparently a thing. There, you see. So the owl has a blurred out eyes, and if you're a native person, particularly not only a free boy, if you're native to Turtle Island, there's a good chance you will know what that means, right? But it's not really explained. It's just like there, and then you're like, oh. But it's kind of funny because it's like, usually it's some kind of nudity or something else, or sometimes like a middle finger will get pixelated out or censored out. But it's the owls that are getting pixelated out. But it's because of the owl's gaze and what that means, and like looking at owls and owls looking you and owls looking in eyes, having being being a thing you don't want to do, right? In indigenous culture, so the owl's eyes are blurred out, and so like the little things like that, right? Which is just like you just have to kind of know that, right? It's a show that's made uh, from an indigenous perspective for other indigenous people. Now, of course, like you don't necessarily have to be indigenous to you don't have to be on the wrong one. You don't necessarily have to be indigenous to watch the show, right? But there's like little things like that that like are makes it clear that this show is from that perspective, and it's dealing with the multidimensionality of the variety of different give me 1 second here. It's the the multidimensionality and the variety of different experiences that people have as indigenous people, and it doesn't really take it's not necessarily like indigenous people are going to save the world. It's actually a lot of it still does deal with the trauma and the problems that like we have to go through. Like it does deal with people, us having to it does still deal with like we have to go through poverty. Like the main characters of the show are going on their heist, as I was saying earlier before I kind of went off on 5 tangents at the same time. Where's my little heist picture? I'm sorry, I'm already deep into. I'm in the red with 75 tabs open already. I'm looking at my RAM and processing power. They're like, they're flashing, thermonuclear tab meltdown in any second. So let me find my Flamin' Flamers that I lost. So the Flamin' Flamers and Reservation Dogs, they're going on the heist because they're trying to get out of California. Why are they trying to get out of California? Because it's their one of their friends passed away, and he was like depressed in part because he of the lack of opportunities, the lack of at least perceived lack of opportunities, the lack of experiences, the familial troubles that are knock-on results of colonization. And he's like, this place is killing. The kids are like, the friends are like, this place killed him. We have to get out of this place. And what are we going to do? We're going to go to California. We're going to become rich and famous, right? Because that's the American. We're going to live the American dream, because our indigenous home here is dying, right? So it's like we have to become Americans, basically. It's part of that's actually a big part of how continued colonization works. Is it's not necessarily like, historically in the beginning, especially British, French, and Spanish, the original way was to like just beat kids until they stop speaking their language and practicing their culture and speaking to their gods and practicing their religions, right? It was just to beat it out of the kids, to wash their mouth out with soap. My parents, they had their mouths washed out with soap because it was, if you spoke the language of Native Hawaiian, right, the Kanaka Maoli language, then we had to rip that out of you, and the punishment was like symbolic. The cleaning of the mouth with the Tide dish soap, right, or the bar of bath soap, was about teaching the kid, whilst them suffering this horrible, disgusting feeling in their mouth, and just and the suffering, which is its own trauma, and colonizers like forcing physical corporal punishment, punitive measures upon their own kids, which again, Native Hawaiians didn't practice any physical corporal punishment of children prior to colonization, like billions of other people actually, and certainly much of the Pacific. But then the soap was symbolic to say stop speaking that language, right? So when the Native peoples, and so the kids are like, kind of like, so one of my point was like, that was the old way of indigenous erasure and colonization and eradication of the culture that is part of Americanization, right, or Euroization, right, or Britishization, Spanishization in South America, right, Frenchization in French Tahiti or Vietnam. The process was more like directly more brutal, right, or more, not saying more brutal, but more obvious and more direct. And then modern ways of colonization are more about attracting like pied like an anglerfish's lure, like the bright shiny light. Come to California, right? Come to LA, right? Look at the Kardashians. Look at the celebrities. Look at Kanye. You could be a rapper or a b-baller and make millions of dollars. Look at Taylor Swift if you're a white person. Like look at Elon. You can be a billionaire, a philanthropist, fancy technologist. You have a hot wife like Gwyneth Paltrow and Pepper Potts. It's like trying to pull people, right, with advertising and marketing. False, obviously, because you have about a 1 million or less chance to ever become an Elon, a billionaire, etc. And to pull people into Americanization, to pull people into believing in capitalism and the American dream and being a selfish, self-centered, kowtowing to the settler colonizer state, the supremacy. When you become a landlord, try to become a landlord, and so aspire. Don't join that union because you aspire to one day become the boss, the millionaire, the CEO. And so like that pull, but then also that pulls the white, descendants of Europeans, right? That's one thing people are saying. Normalize the calling people Euro Americans, right? Or Euro people in Turtle Island, because that's what it is, right? It's like your descendants are identifying in that way, and there are many other peoples that were also in the continent before you, right? And there are also people that are African that are also in the continent, right, of Turtle Island, North America. There's many names for it, but I'll just use America shorthand. But that is an Italian map maker's name, grafted onto a huge landmass that has hundreds of millions of people in it. So, anyways, it's about pulling you out, right? And so the kids are trying to, the kids in Reservation Dogs season 1 are trying to get out of the reservation because they're being pulled by the lure of fame, fortune, making it, one of the kids says like, oh, maybe I'll be a chef. Is it Laura? I'll be like a chef, or maybe I'll be a basketball star, or maybe I'll be, I'll make a lot of money starting a tech company, start like a Indigicoin or something. Or maybe I'll be a police officer and be solving crime and defending my community, just like on, LA, NYPD Blue, or, the millions of other cop shows that are propaganda to reinforce the leg breakers for capitalism and racism. But anyways, but it's about pulling people out and making them want to join the project, as opposed to just like beating the native language and culture out of you and making because that's not because like that's beyond, not because the colonizers view that as too immoral. Obviously they don't. They do horrible things all around the world, especially in the Middle East right now, in Asia and Africa, and outside of their little neighborhoods, right? But because it's unsightly in the 20th and 21st century, post World War II especially, because of large communist former colonies in particular, it's unsightly in the present to beat the culture out of the kids, even though they still punish children for speaking Hawaiian in Hawaii in 2022. One of the reasons why we don't send our kids to school, because we don't want our kids to, be punished and come home crying because they spoke Hawaiian in school in so-called United States state of Hawaii. The public schools. So this is not like some people said, oh, Cyberspook, that must be at some very strange private conservative Christian school where they punish children for speaking Hawaiian. No, this is in public school. It's public school and private school. That's the thing. They still punish children for speaking Hawaiian in Hawaii. The teacher and the superintendent and the principal of that school, nobody lost any pay or any jobs. They're all fine because So anyway, long story short, so they still do some of that hard. We're gonna beat that culture out of you when they can get away with it. But most of the time, what they try to do is they try to attract you towards, try to pull you out with rotten false carrots towards white supremacy, America, America, which is white supremacist, capitalist, uh, you know, uh, um, you know, believing in selfish, rational interests and all this kind of nonsense and the so-called American dream that you have to be asleep to believe. We just watched Nope yesterday. As quick sidebar recommendation for Jordan Peele's show Nope. Jordan Peele's Nope is a show that is about alien an alien invasion that consumes and takes the people up, like in alien abductions, like flying saucers, Roswell, Area 51. But it's I'm not gonna say much more, but I don't want to spoil anything. But Nope is a very good show that specifically shoot, I lost it, but just watch Nope, because we just watched Nope. Oh, I was just also going to say, there's a quote by the actor who plays the leader of the ship in Alien Resurrection, whose name escapes me at the moment. He's also in The Crow. He's like the guy with sounds like Tom Waits, Scarfing Gravel, and flaming vodka for 10 years, and then your voice gets super, like your vocal cords are made of roast beef. I forget what the hell is it? I can't remember the guy's name. But anyways, I can never remember names I want to remember when I need to remember them. But he plays a auteur, like very dedicated to his craft director, who is sick of making knockoff Marvel movies that make $1 billion but are kind of like rehashes of the last 25 Marvel movies. And he's like, you make one for Hollywood, then you make one for yourself, right? And so he's like, he's editing footage of a movie that probably nobody's gonna watch. It's like some kind of experimental film that's like his own take on the Seventh Seal, or who knows, right? But like, so he's like trying to get the perfect movie. He's trying to make the perfect movie that nobody will see, but he wants to make the kind of the ultimate movie. He's like it's kind of like he's not really John Carpenter. That's not really who I'm thinking of. But anyways, so there's one part where he says, like, you guys think about the American dream. He's like, this dream that you have, right? Everybody in Nope is like, they dream, right? The characters in Nope are dreaming of capturing on camera the first legitimate, incontrovertible proof of the existence of an alien civilization, right? An actual UFO on video evidence, and there's a UFO around, right? And so they want the director, and so he doesn't believe at the time, and he's like, this dream that you're chasing, right? The one where you're up on the top of the mountain over everyone else, it's a dream that you never wake up from, right? So it's kind of like, but it's kind of like, that is part of like the American. They're like, we're gonna get the Oprah shot, we're gonna get on Oprah, and then we're gonna have money, and we're gonna have fame, and we'll never have to work again, because we're gonna be the big, huge stars, because everybody's gonna be thinking so much of this shot that we got, right? This like, it's like getting the video footage of Bigfoot, and we'll be like renowned throughout history because of this great thing we did, right? And so it's a lot of this is about America and fame and the temporarily embarrassed superstar, along with temporarily embarrassed millionaire, milieu and personally propagated ideology, right? That keeps everybody moving in America. It keeps everybody moving up, and so like that's a major theme in Nope. That I like a lot. That's like, and if the engine of America, all these people, all these suckers that keep coming in, and then which has the lowest rate of upward mobility. It's actually the least likely to move up in social and economic status, as opposed to reaching the top of the mountain, right? Or becoming not even a millionaire, just having a decent life with your healthcare, your housing, your food, and your health, and your children's future secured. America is actually one of the worst, certainly in the Western countries, or the worst for the masses of the people. Even compared to the East, it's far worse. But America's engine keeps going despite having 1,000 times more per capita COVID deaths than China, despite having 1,000 times more homelessness than Vietnam, despite having a shorter life expectancy by 2 full years than Cuba and dropping. People keep aspiring to come to America. Why, right? It's the anglerfish's lure. It's like it's the false hope. It's the rotten carrot, right? It pulls people in and then it eats them, right? Not unlike a tractor beam from an extraterrestrial sucking you up into their disc-like, thermodynamics violating spacecraft, and then sticking things up your butt. I mean, there's also there's a joke in Neofeud too, where it's like, why is it all about sticking things up the butts? Because of the suppressed homosexuality in a cis heteronormative patriarchal culture. It's why all the UFOs are constantly putting probes in people's butt, because that's what they want. But they can't say that. They're just like hugging each other on Brokeback Mountain and waiting for the UFOs. Anyways, we're way off course though. But but that topic of Nope is relevant. Oh, by the way, me and Professor Flowers and possibly some other people will be having a discussion. Myself, Professor Flowers, will be having a BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and People of Color discussion about Nope on October 8th, unless I'm mistaken. I gotta double check that, but I think it's one of the Saturdays coming up. So look out for that. And so Reservation Dogs is a show that is dealing with a lot of those topics, right? And the dealing with the topic of the new forms, which is like, I love Hollywood movie. I've seen all the Marvel movies. Obviously, I watched this. Part of my job description is, it's being 9:30 at night, and then I have to go to Holly. Holly, what's the most trending, number one, most buzziest, most hottest, most watched show, so that I can talk about it. And like even before that, I was watching. I've consumed so much pop culture, but at the same time, it's like, and a lot of these streams that I do are kind of talking about, like I have all of my streams about why, billionaire philanthropist, arms dealer, playboy protagonists in the most watched movies of all time in the West, like things like Iron Man. I don't know where I put that one. I've done so many streams on these things, right? But why that's problematic, because then it reinforces the idea that billionaires who work with the military industrial complex and are with Silicon Valley tech magnates and are misogynists are great saviors of the world. That's part of that is part of that the rotten carrot pull of colonization and adherence to capitalism and white supremacy, right? And selfishness, right? Because look, self-centered entrepreneur, so-called industrial spirit, right? As Ayn Rand put it, the great anti-communist writer of the manual for the U.S. superpower in all of Hollywood, with the Motion Picture Association for the Preservation of American Values Screen Guide, which Ayn Rand literally wrote, always glorify the industrialist, always glorify the capitalist, always glorify the man, and it's always a man, even from Ayn Rand, who was not a man. She was a good wife in the Handmaid's Tale sense. Always glorify, demonize the common, demonize the collective, right? And so like that's that kind of stuff is baked into media, and it's baked into Western mainstream massively funded media at the highest levels. Not for reasons that are explicitly outlined at the highest levels of power in the United States and the West and the colonizer world, right? You got people. That's why I do a lot of these streams. A lot of my point that I know I sound like a broken record or a misfiring VHS tape. But it's culture is power. It's the word. A lot of people say. I think people like miss some people. Not everybody knows the word hegemony. It's like, but the hegemony. It's not simply. It's not economics alone. Like what. It's religion, it's culture, it's language, it's movies, it's entertainment, it's games, it's books, it's Dungeons and Dragons, it's everything. What I'm saying? Like Dungeons and Dragons itself is, doesn't have positive aspects to it, but it's like everything, all of culture has impact, and what the impact you think that movies are about a thing, but they're never about the thing that you think they're. You think a news article is about, a technology, but that's not what it's about. The news article is not about the Wired article about artificial intelligence, self-driving cars, and the trolley problem. It's not about the trolley problem. It's not about the artificial intelligence. It's about the most important thing in that article is the part where it says in Venezuela, where socialism has caused mass famine, death, and worship of strongmen. The authoritarian regime there, the people all choose to have the self-driving cars AI run over the poor, 10 poor people rather than go to one wealthy person because of socialism. That's the propaganda is always what you don't. It's never the most important propaganda is always what you least expect. I was just reading an article about a South African electricity. African solar energy project that's going to use HDCV, or what is it called? It's like a very high density electrical cables, like 3,000 to 5,000 miles long, going from Morocco to the UK to pipeline energy, right? Because the UK is out of energy, right? And the most important is not. It goes into a lot of details about they have a multi-million megawatt panels, and they have these incredible all these technical details about the lines and UK has to get green, and King Charles, the Enviro King, the climate change carer king, and that's propaganda, obviously, as if any Euro feudalist capitalist colonizer royalty gave any shits about that. But the important thing is that they leave out the history of Britain in Africa. Who's setting up the companies in Africa? Why is Britain being forced to do that? Right? Because they go along with U.S. imperial needless warfare and aggression and propaganda that supports that against Russia and China, and the UK continues to be right. So the propaganda is always that. Anyway, I'm like way off my topic. So but so the movies and the shows that you watch have all kind of, it's very, it matters. And that's why I'm like I spend a lot of time also because I don't want to get my YouTube channel taken down and thousands of hours of my work literally deleted in an instant, the way that Abby Martin, Lee Camp, and countless other actual journalists just had all their videos wiped. Danny Haifong is another, name that we wanted Danny to be on this panel. He couldn't, he was busy, but today. But it's like, he's had countless of his own videos taken down just for commenting on particular topics. He's having illegitimate copyright strikes and illegitimate takedowns from the mainstream media or the political entities or the blue check mark accounts that he's commenting on, right? And so that's why I kind of just everything I'm doing is merely talking about my faves. This is actually the John Carpenter strategy, if you think about it, right? John Carpenter made a movie about the evils of neoliberalism and capitalism, and the ultra rich, the DC Pentagon and Hollywood and Wall Street elite are a bunch of eldritch, horrific, alien skeletoids who are sucking the life out of humanity. Right? It's called They Live, but he got it made because he made it for like $10,000, and it was just some cheesy B-list horror movie, and they don't look into it, right? And it's like, but it's actually like that movie. All this shit is like super basic shit. John Carpenter, but I'm taking one from the master of horror. Jordan Peele admits that he is Jordan Peele, the black author and very good director, of course, was called the master of horror, and he said, no, I can't. You cannot. I cannot allow this blasphemy. John Carpenter is the master of horror, and so I'm taking one from the master of horror, which is the master of the master of getting truth across in an empire of disinformation. Anyways, I'm like way off the topic though. What's up, Big Teal? So let me see if I can get back to it. Yeah, but Reservation Dogs and Ancestresses. So let me. I said I was gonna talk about that, and I've like missed that topic. I keep on dancing around it. I feel like I've tried to sell as much Reservation Dogs as I possibly can. Actually, since I'm about to go into it, let me take a second and let me show you a brief trailer for something that you might want to check out. And then I'll get right back. Actually, I need to get some water because I've been talking for too many thousands of words straight. Indigistar is a game specifically about indigenous struggles and made by myself, an indigenous person, about colonization, about empire, and about trying to prevent erasure and plunder and getting wiped off the face of the earth or whatever planet you happen to be on. And that game is called Indigistar. And consider also helping us at Ko-Fi, becoming a patron, picking up any of our games or music. It really does. Every dollar helps to keep us the lights on, the roofs up, people having their basic needs met, and keep us going, keep our vehicles running, and keep the kids fed. It really does help. And whatever you have, $1, $3, $5 a month, whatever you have, consider what the education/entertainment is worth to you, and help us out. But here's the trailer for Indigistar. I'll be right back.
For eons, the indigenous Bedu Ora people lived in peace on their planet, in harmony with nature and each other. Hunter-gatherers sprouted into villages. Villages begot cities, yet millennia passed without war. Over time, the Bedu Ora built great civilizations while maintaining the Garden of Eden, the mother homeworld which birthed them. They blossomed up toward the stars, sailed Hokuva'a, starships, across the galactic Silk Road, trading with other peoples. Now, the unhealed descendants of Roman trauma, the Utopian Empire arrives to eradicate and plunder. The mother Aina desecrated, the relatives broken, the water of life poisoned. Kailati, a peace officer of the cosmic tree, must heal land and people, prevent colonial erasure of native language and culture, and confront the invaders before it is too late.
So anyways, yeah, so if you enjoyed that trailer and you would like to check out that game, check out Indigistar, which is on itch.io, and it is I've extended the goal, so we are not 54% of the $600 goal. I mean, really, if I was to get the amount of money that, in terms of the time, I spent about a month and a half on this game, it would be approximately $3,000 to $5,000. So that really should be the goal for me, but I'm giving you a real discount on this one. But if you can help us reach the goal of $600 raised for this game, it really does help. It is a game about empire arriving to eradicate and plunder, heal the land of people, prevent erasure of their native language and culture, confront the invaders before it is too late. And it's a game that it's directly related to what Reservation Dogs is kind of about, the indigenous experiences. It's a now Indigistar is a science fictional game, but it is a game about those experiences. Let me see if I can find where was that? Somebody posted something I liked about this sci-fi crap. I lost it. Somebody made a comment about Indigistar that I wanted to speak to briefly. Shit. Let me see if I can find it in the next 20 seconds. Otherwise, I'm fired. think I might have reshared it. This is Mastodon, which you can also follow me on if you would like to follow me on a non-capitalist, decentralized, federated social media platform. Oh yeah, this is what I wanted to say. So speaking to Indigistar, so this is somebody called Agreeable Landscape, which I don't know too much about them, but they have interacted with me on this thing. With sci-fi, most media are ultimate stage capitalism / tech bro land being portrayed as a utopia. I wonder why. Or they admit it's a shithole, but they never try to solve it. So that's like cyberpunk, right? Dystopian sci-fi. Rarer is like Star Trek, where it might be communists, though they're not allowed to say that word, of course, right? We just have, you can take carbon and you can take trash and turn it into McDonald's burgers, or McDonald's burgers and nanotechnologically convert it into gold with the food printer. Nobody really has a job in Star Trek. Might be communist, but fully automated luxury communism is taken for granted, which it is taken for granted. There's not much class consciousness value in Star Trek. Rarest games like yours, like Indigistar and Neofeud, etc. Rarest games like yours portraying both an active struggle for socialism and class consciousness. So thank you for that. So that was a response to Neofeud and Indigistar and the other games that I've made. So, I think that's like not to pat myself on the back, even though I just did that, but it is like that is what it's about, because there's so much missing. And Decolonizers, of course, which is about the struggle of the Vietnamese people, right? Like, Star Trek, yeah, it's kind of like we're moving in a, what if we had more peaceful civilizational interactions with other different peoples across the galaxy? And by extension, what if Earth's peoples coexisted better? The other Earth still has similarities to that as well. Cyberpunk is like, oh, the future is hell, but we just have individuals surviving techno-dystopian hellscape. And techno-dystopia always looks like East Asia for some reason, right? I wonder why. Yellow Peril, anti-communism. But so like that's, some parts are good. Like, yeah, there are dangers to surveillance technology, artificial intelligence, runaway, nanotech, gray goo, mega corporations running everything. There are dangers to them, but they're not really exploring all of history and the present and the future of those technologies and the socio-economic, political, total, they're not exploring all of the present, the history, and the possible futures. They're very limited. So Indigistar is like, well, what if there's like indigenous people, like 90% of the world? What if the galaxy is actually 90% of the galaxy is actually like 90% of Earth, which is mostly indigenous people trying to come out from horrific invaders, trying to plunder, ban language, erase culture, right? And so, right, but there's not really, there are some, but it's usually black, it's non-white science fiction, like Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. I'm sure there's way more stuff I'm not even thinking of. Umurangi Generation is made by my Maori friend Naftali Faulkner. But they're not very well known, and neither is Indigistar. But I don't have nobody. Again, no, that's the kind of the weird paradox is nobody's gonna give you funding to try to like speak truth through your entertainment and your pop culture and your movies and your games. A capitalist white supremacist structure is not gonna give non-white, anti-capitalist, socialist, global South people the money, the funding to make the things that people need to see and hear and experience. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's why we need rogue educators and rogue edutainers that we try to be. And so while I'm at it, if you want more direct communist, anti-capitalist, decolonial games, Decolonizers is one where you literally kick the United States' butt out of Vietnam as a giant capitalist colonizer. It's more direct land back. Anyways, so but ads aside, let's finish up because I gotta start this panel soon. I gotta start this panel in about 1 hour and 40 minutes. So let me talk about the Ancestresses, which I have shamefully failed to speak about. So coming back to this moment, is like, actually that I'm kind of like doing what I said I was gonna do, which is like, I want to talk about the history that all comes up to this moment. There's a very important point in this scene that it's indigenous women, right? Or indigenous non-men, but it's certainly indigenous women, indigenous healers, right? And where Willie Jack's character this one of the reservation dogs, right, who is kind of gone through this process of trying to survive, trying to just live their life as an indigenous person in 2022 on a reservation, right? Consuming vast quantities of hot Cheetos, going on Instagram and sharing a tweet about liking the latest She-Hulk, and then playing some Doom, and then speaking to the ancestors, and then trying to restore pluricrop, regenerative agriculture in your region, which is stuff that, I mean, that's not what Willie Jack does specifically, but that's like what that's a normal day for an indigenous person, is doing all those things at different times in the day. And then and being like halfway in between worlds, and sometimes like more in one or the other, sometimes in two simultaneously, like Taika Waititi's Thriller Haka, being in Michael Jackson horror music videos circa 1982, and then also in 600 AD, dancing the dance that was about defending your area from potential invaders like the British. Anyways, and so Reservation Dogs is like, in this scene though, specifically about the ancestresses. I can't even say that word. Ancestresses. Ancestresses. Reservation Dogs this episode is about Willie Jack going to the prison to see the mother of their best friend who died 2 years ago, right? And the reason why, a big reason why they're trying to, right, get into their god damn it, too many tabs. This why they're stealing the hot Cheetos or Flamin' Flamers to make enough money to get the car and the gas and get to California to become famous and rich in Los Angeles, right? And become a reality star, a podcast host, something cool and glamorous, something important, like an actor, as Cypher would say. So Flamin'. So the reason why they're doing that is because their friend died, and this is the mother of the friend. And in season 2, it's kind of like maybe we took the wrong turn, right? Maybe we shouldn't have done that, right? Maybe like by stealing from our own community, right? By trying to ditch our community and leave our culture behind and just become American famous Taylor Swifts and P. Diddy's and Elon's and Wall Street bankers or whatever we thought we were going to be, rich and famous in American racist capitalism. By erasive capitalism, I would add, not just racist, erasive, meaning like erasing everything about the past, right? Ahistorical Americanism, which is slightly different than false historical Europe. But they said maybe that was the wrong thing, right? And so in a lot of season 2, Bear gets a job. So Bear's like, maybe I shouldn't just be stealing stuff. Maybe I should try to get a job. So Bear is one of the characters. He learns how to roof with his some of his family members and his uncles and his relatives. Like everyone's relatives. Sometimes that's both a benefit and a drawback at various times. Nothing is free. And being indigenous, you do have much more community and family, but then you also have more responsibilities, which that's just part of being a member of the community, right? But then you also might have sometimes you have some other relatives that are like can be eras or irritating at times. But anyways, so Reservation Dogs is Bear's trying to come back in season 2 and trying to. He gets a talk from one of his ancestors, right? And it's comedic. The Dallas Go-To guy is like in the blue porta potty taking like mega ancient spiritual shits. That's part of the whole thing. Is like, maybe sometimes your ancestors are just like being weird oversharers when you're just trying to like, get to your next doctor's appointment, and they're like talking to their dick in the optometrist's office. The ancestor is talking to his ancestral dick and weirding you out, and you're like, ancestor, what the fuck are you doing? And Bear's like, I'm not talking to you now. It's like, because it's a joke, because like, oh, indigenous people are always talking to their ancestors. They're just communing with the tree and the spirit and the nature, and they're just like singing to the whales, riding the whales. They're playing the flute on the mountaintop. They're like the Na'vi, like James Cameron just re-releasing Avatar. Science fiction, indigenous people, they're just like under the tree, wailing something sacred, sticking their brain jack / kitty, space kitty dreadlocks into the plants, communing with the nature. And I'm not saying that like that's not a thing that happens, but it's like that's like that's not how it always works out. It's not utopia. Indigenous peoples had sustained ecological harmony with people, nature, and our non-human relatives for millennia all over the world. But I mean, it's not perfect. It's a lot magnitudes better than Euro barbarism and mass murder and disinformation, lying and nasty short brutish lives and enslavement and that kind of thing. But it's not perfect. It's not. It's like And then the comedy is a lot of Reservation Dogs comedy is kind of like it's very in-house. Because like you know that. And then although a lot of it is roasting Western tropes of what it means to be indigenous, which is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun for me as an indigenous person. I will tell you that. It's a lot like a Silver Spook stream with a multi-million-dollar budget, produced by Taika Waititi. That's Reservation Dogs. But anyways, so Bear is trying to get. They're all trying to improve their lives. So what I'm trying to say, right? They're trying to contribute to the community. They're trying to be an upstanding member. They're trying to not hurt their community, right? They're like, Elora, Bear gets a job roofing. Elora, Reservation Dogs season 2. She and her friend, they try to go to California, right? They kind of get stuck, and Elora is like, oh, my grandma is sick and dying, and she's like, it's kind of like, I want fame and fortune for myself as a normal Westerner, right? Whether they are a British monarch getting forced applause at British police gunpoint, until sufficient tears have been cried for my mother, Queen Elizabeth, ruleress of the world, you will be beaten, right? The beatings will continue until sufficient tears have been shed for feudal capitalist colonialists, like the Queen Mother. That's selfish individualism. Or in America, it's like, look out for yourself, number one, right? Make your million, right? Become the next Wall Streeter, right? Make your big podcast. Sell out all of your leftists in the organization and just do so-called MAGA communism with funding from right-wing branches of the State Department. Just make it for yourself. Screw everyone else, right? And Elora goes, no, I'm not going to screw everyone. My family matters, my community matters. And she kind of like has to like make a decision to not eat the hook, line, and sinker of the so-called American dream. And then she goes back. Bear like goes, I'm going to not be like my dad. I'm not going to be this like, wannabe rapper dude that is a deadbeat to his son. He's like, oh, what's your name, son? I don't even know your name. How old are you? I don't know. What do you expect me to know? Right? He's like, Bear's like, I'm going to try to like, be more responsible. And then Willie Jack is trying to keep their group together. And there's a lot of front loading to this moment, but in this moment, Willie Jack's like, we're not really together though. Willie Jack's like feeling like we're like, our group is not, we're not who we were before. Like Willie Jack at least feels like we're missing something. And Willie Jack's like, I don't know how to really help us to come together and get through this. Willie Jack feels kind of like left out of the group as well. Like Willie Jack doesn't feel like they're spending the time they used to spend together. And then so other people are telling Willie Jack, well, people just grow apart. But then there's also, the family, the Willie Jack gets the letter of their dead, their dead friend, right? The letter that he wrote what do you want? It's a letter that the indigenous teen wrote at the start of the school year. At the start of, I think, was it freshman year? It's like starting high school. What do you want to be when you grow up, right? What do you want to do? And then, but now he's committed suicide, and now Willie Jack gets the letter and is reading it, and it's, and Willie Jack's like, what do I do with this? And Daniel, right? His mom needs this letter, but the mom's in prison, right? And part of it is the mom, the family had a really it was a very troubled home, right, for Daniel. That's part of why he killed himself. And so Willie Jack is going to the prison to meet the mother of their friend who had committed suicide, to give her the letter and talk to her and try to figure out something, right? Some like what they can do, what Willie Jack can do to help the community. And so then, and the mother, the mother who's of Daniel, who's in prison. It's also like, why are indigenous people in prison, right? Why are black and indigenous and non-white people in prison disproportionately for nonviolent offenses? Because we still need slave labor and commit genocide in the United States. But anyways, so Willie Jack is, but the mother is like herself in prison, and talking to her own ancestresses, like the girl behind, the woman behind Willie Jack, and is kind of like Dallas Goldtooth, but not quite as comedic. And it's kind of like, you have, I walked the trail of tears. You have to be, I walked the trail of tears. Like we underwent like some of the direct colonization, yet we still tried our best to heal our communities, and we're there for our next generations, right? And in this moment, you see all of the ancestors, right, and particularly all the ancestresses who carry the community. Like there's a whole episode just about the indigenous women and what they do specifically for the community. Like the only break that Bear's mom gets is she's like, I wish I could have a break from being the sister and the auntie and the mom and the cousin and the daughter and doing everything for everyone, all the appointments, all the food. When the dudes when the dudes try to go get a rapping career in LA and then disappear, when they fall down, when people go to jail, I always have to be there. The only way that I could ever, as an indigenous woman, you have to do everything and be everyone to everyone, carry the culture, carry the material, the economic, work at the IHS, keep everyone's healthcare going, do everything, right? And Bear's mom, the women all have their day at the Indian Health Services meeting, right? That was one episode where they're all like, the only way that I could ever get a day off is if I like got it into a car accident and I was hospitalized. And that would be the only time in my life where I could like have one of those nice coolers where they give you the drinks. The hospital food might not be that good. It might be like a little like freeze dried pizza or whatever, but at least someone else would be cooking for me for the only time in my life ever. And it's like, I remember I was kind of like sad for that moment, but that is true though. Like, it's like, even in Hawaii, I remember like it was the indigenous, the Native Hawaiian grandma was like doing everything. Like I was running a STEM program myself for the at-risk and youth disproportionately, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander in Hawaii. But the woman who was always there every day volunteering, getting the kids, getting the signatures, keeping everyone in line. I had 30 kids between the age, imagine 30 kids this is like literally the poorest area in the United States, actually. When you look at cost of living compared to the actual cost of living compared to incomes and wealth, etc. I worked in literally the poorest place in the entire United States, including Camden, New Jersey, including Oakland, everywhere. The poorest place in the United States, like by their own measurements, right? By I think it was the University of Missouri. They did an actual study. Magnitudes worse than anywhere in the United States. In the poor, and who was carrying the children, right? Who was making sure all the kids were getting their receipts? Who was there when all the dads weren't there, right? For all the Native Hawaiian, the Filipino, the Samoan, the Tongan kids. It's Kali, Palama. If you're in Hawaii, Kali, Palama, Waianae. I worked in all of them actually, but Kali is one of the poorest. Waianae, Palolo, on the island of Oahu, right, where the water is full of F-22 jet fuel. It was the aunties, you know. It was aunties. It was grandma. Her name was I shouldn't say what the name is, but she was there every day, like basically every single day. She didn't take any days off, taking care of other people's kids. She had like literally over 10 kids of her own grandkids, other people's grandkids. She was also on the board of the organization, the nonprofit that I was working at, trying to make sure that as much of the money wasn't going into the slush funds of a corrupt, bought off Democrat politicians like Nancy Pelosi's of Hawaii. There, oh my God, Hawaii's the only place more corrupt than California and New York is, and DC is Hawaii, because it's the most ultra-American place, the illegal occupation. She was making sure that as much as possible, the community got the things, the needs that the kids got the education. Like I was working with kids who had no footwear. They're like sleeping outside of my classroom on the street. Homeless kids. Hawaii is the highest homeless population. 30% of the kids that I was teaching robotics and STEM and Scratch programming were homeless children. Like Tongan kid with his hair full of tuna fish. He smelled like, remember what kid? His name was Siala. He smelled like tuna fish every day. He had dirt and mud on his face. He had one slipper. His dad was a Tongan rock wall builder. His mom was Samoan. Unfortunately, a lot of drug problems. Dad lived in his car, and dad wasn't always there. Dad tried to be there. Mom was, I don't know. Mom came to one of the Lego robotics competitions, and she just like bawled her eyes out because she knew that she unfortunately hadn't been there the whole time. And poverty. I mean, I don't want to give you. I have thousands of these kids' stories when I worked as a, trying to, as a social services worker, trying to do poverty alleviation. It's a lot like what Danny Haifong did and tries to do. And it was like, and I'll be like, he'd be like, he'd come in the classroom and he'd be like scarfing down the hot Cheetos, and he's scarfing that. We mostly I tried to have healthier like veggie sticks and like fruit snacks. He'd be just like scarfing it down because he was starving. Why is he starving? Because he's a homeless child displaced from all of his Pacific Islands, right, by the French and the American empires. But this auntie, this Native Hawaiian auntie, she was there. She always was on his case, but he needed somebody to be on his case. He's kind of a brat, so he was hard to work with sometimes. I'll be like, okay, this is the ultrasonic sensor. It goes onto this. This is where you program in the C# into the computer, and you make the Lego robot, sense the little Lego robot car senses where it's going. It's like making a moon lander, like a Mars rover out of Legos. But he'd be like, yelling and throwing Legos, or I don't want to do this. And like, me and Auntie, she was holding the thing down when I had 30 kids between the ages, 30 kids between 2nd and 8th grade in the most impoverished area. Some of them literal Bloods and Crips, or just random delinquent kids, but she was there for everyone when their own biological parents, their whatever guardians, the foster parents who are abusing the crap out of the non-white kids in the ghetto, she was there for everyone. And I asked her, I was like, I didn't want to let her leave, but I was like, me and my family, Holly and myself, we were basically homeless in my home Ahupua'a, in my home island of Oahu. But I was like, there were kids who were worse off than me. There still are kids that are worse off than me in the poorest place in the United States. By the way, the poorest place in the United States, the most economically impoverished and the most mass incarceration of children in the United States is in Hawaii, by the way. I don't know if you did, just in case you didn't know that. I was like, I had to ask her, like, is it, I can't be here anymore because my family, I'm like burning out. I can't even be a parent to my own kids because I'm working my butt off to do 3 separate jobs, and I'm walking to work because I'm too poor to have a car. My landlord said I'm spilling too much oil from my Toyota Corolla at 30 years old, spilling too much oil, and it's broken. I can't even drive it. So I'm walking to work. My kid's getting older. I live in my parents' closet. I can't raise me and my wife are stressed out to shit. Me and Holly, we can't raise kids here. And she said, like, you gotta just, Chris. She said, Chris, you just gotta leave. You gotta go. This organization is not gonna do anything for you, And so that was part of, like, as the ancestors carrying the weight. I mean, it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be like indigenous women have to just fucking pick up everyone else's broken pieces, and women generally. Shouldn't have to pick up all the broken pieces for everyone else's messes, you know. But you know, when I was like, you know, I have to try my best to help as many people as possible, but I can't even survive this, you know. And I don't have any. We don't have any place to go, you know. We gotta figure out. That's why we're not on Oahu anymore, right? We would be. I'd be in the military probably by now, or I don't know. Who the fuck knows? I don't know what would happen. We're not able to survive that. But you know, I asked her and I said, like, is it okay if, you know, we have to figure something else out? And I'm like, we'll keep teaching and doing whatever we can do when we leave this island, but we can't live here anymore, you know. Can't survive it, you know. I can't even be a father because I'm so burnt out. I'm like, I don't want to see my own kids. You know, after being, you know, like dealing with like kid. I mean, anyway, I don't want to give you all of the. It's like a lot of trauma. And this is not trauma porn time. But she was like, you have to go because this organization is corrupt. This is it's a nonprofit Democrat run, ostensibly for poverty alleviation, to provide opportunities for all the Native Hawaiian kids to have an opportunity to have a better life. All this bullshit. She's like, no, I know all the people on the board. I'm just, you know, I'm here. I'm trying to help the community here. You have like given like a decade of your life, you know. She didn't say all this exactly as I'm saying it, but that's what she was basically saying. Like, so many, you have been here the longest for this program, trying to help thousands of these kids in the poorest place in the United States, whose water is coming out like gasoline in a toxic environmental fucking food desert that is Oahu. And they've ground up and spat out so many other teachers. Like the average burnout rate was 3 months. The teacher would come in to teach the STEM at this program, and they'd be gone within 3 months. I trained every single teacher, by the way, in all of the poorest areas of Hawaii. And so there's a lot of Neofeud. A lot of my streams are just all this frustration and anger coming out. But it's like, you know, but she was like, you know, you have to go and you have to figure out more ways to continue to fulfill your kuleana, your responsibility, you know. And I am the matriarch telling you, this is what you have to do, you know. Like, it's that's not what she said exactly, but that's like what was coming through. Because I was like, I don't want to leave you here. I don't want to leave you here, Auntie, with all of these problems. You know, I don't want to leave you here with all these problems and like not enough support to pick it all up. You know, well, all your other your sister's cousins are signing up for the military. Even your other Native Hawaiian family members, they're all working for the giant corporations. They're all in the corrupt police department. They're all, you know, you got to pick up the ghetto when you have all the suburban Hawaiians and other just people in Hawaii taking advantage from the people who have left the reservation. I mean, because there is no reservation. It's just, everyone's just urban natives. It just, you know, it's urban reservation dogs, you know, but it's just, everyone's just in the shit. It's all America, but you have to find little pockets of whatever you can of Hawaii that you can. And it's like, I don't want to leave you here with all of this, but she was like, you know, Chris, you have to go because like that, your partner and your kids, you know, you can't sacrifice all of them. Things are not going to change inside of this organization. Even if there were 3 of me, you know, and I this is what I kind of realized later. It's like, even if I had 10, 20 aunties like me picking up all these pieces, that wouldn't be enough inside of this organization, inside of Oahu. You know, that wouldn't be enough, you know? Like, and that's what I'd be like, you know, for every 10, 100 kids that I stop from going to prison, for every 10 of those Samoan, Tongan kids, or the professional Grand Theft, literal professional car thieves that were going to like go to straight to prison or try to make $1 million in California. All the wannabe Kanyes who got a gun and got themselves shot by rival gang members or by cops. The highest rate of police murders is in Hawaii per capita of people of color. Highest rate. All the kids who are going to get themselves murdered by the cops, mass incarcerated to mechanically separate Tyson chicken McNuggets for the rest of their life in an Arizona prison. Hawaii is the highest rate of mass incarceration of children. Native Hawaiians are twice as likely to be mass incarcerated than black people, which is 2.5 times as likely as white people. And Hawaii is the highest rate. For every kid that I stopped from going to prison, I don't regret stopping them from going to prison. There were like 10 to 30 times more coming out every year, getting screwed, leaving Hawaii, having the Hawaiianness erased from them, being forced to make the hard, terrible decision to join the U.S. military to get the $8,000 cost of living that they need to get the roof and the meal ticket stamped. Joining the military, becoming a real estate agent, or going to New York and making a lot of money, because that's the only way you survive Hawaii, unfortunately. Or you have grandfathered in because your mommy and daddy own multi-million-dollar worth of house. My parents are like lounging to death inside of a dying Catholic seminary. The house is rotting. The road is falling apart. So the water is coming out with jet fuel in it. It always has. Now it's just extremely high quantities of jet fuel of the U.S. military. So, anyway, but that's like, I'm like, well, I'm kind of off. But, when it comes to, so Willie Jack is like going like, how do I help in this moment, right? How do I continue to preserve my community, right? I mean, in a sense, like that's kind of like a question that I have to ask. Like, what do I have to do? I don't even know. Like, I didn't know. Still kind of don't really know. What do the ancestors need me to do? Right? And like, I know a lot more about the history of Hawaii and much more that I didn't know when I was still there. So speaking to the ancestors is not necessarily like having hallucinatory conversations with the ancestor, and indigenous people are just weird woo-woo spiritual superstition believers, right? That's what a lot of like the Dawkinsian, kind of rancid atheist, kind of curdled conservative Christian culture gone wrong, rebels, kind of have this, sense, which is but that's not really what it means. It's about like, no, number one, it's like kind of like checking in with the relatives that are alive, and then also, and asking them for guidance. Now, sometimes they don't give you sometimes the answers. And Willie Jack in the beginning of this is like, the mother who Willie Jack looked up to. That's what I'm saying. The mother of Daniel, right, was looked up to as like this magical person who could fix any problem. And Willie Jack's like, you were just like the amazing healer. You like took care of everybody. You could fix any problem. You just made everything better. You were like the magical healer woman. And then Willie Jackson, but then the mom's in prison now, right? And the mom's kind of like, smoking and kind of not in a good place, depressed, and like not it's like, and then and because she's in prison and her son has died, and right, and it's like, why, and so it's hard because it's like, it's kind of going back to what Bear's mom was saying. It's like, we have to hold everything up. We have to do like all the work for the community and keep it together. When other people fall by their wayside, fail on their responsibilities, the indigenous women have to keep the community together, hold it up, and do like 3 times. Or, it's not the same, but it's like when women were asked to go out and join Hillary Clinton and put your shoulder pads on in the 80s and be a strong woman in the man's world and get a man's job in the corporation, lean into the office and get that corner office, go get yours, boss babe. They didn't call it that in the 80s, right? And then also be a wife and a mother at the same time. So do even more jobs for patriarchal capitalism, but do a full-time 8-hour work job in an office, and then come home and then do an entire cooking and cleaning and mothering Stepford wife job that you did in the 50s. Do both, right? And it's like that also is like way too much to ask for anyone, right? And also sexist in its own weird way, and definitely benefits capitalism that gets double the labor from half the population, thinking that they're kind of like empowering themselves. Not to say that women shouldn't be in offices. They should be able to do whatever they want, but they shouldn't have to do twice the work as half the population that are dudes. That's not cool. But indigenous, but there's a whole other thing when it's indigenous women or women of color, who have to carry all of this. And so then like, and so the mom's like, I wasn't just magic, I was not just, well, she doesn't necessarily say that, but she's like, number one, the expectation that I as a woman had to fix everyone's problems, that's like, but I don't necessarily get the thanks for that, and I don't get like what am I getting? Where is the mutual benefit of that? As part of it's like I did not see that. Number two, sometimes when you try to, and that's why I'm kind of sad and pissed off and really burnt out now. I'm like very unhappy. Like I remember like the auntie that was helping me in when I was teaching the STEM for working with the at-risk underserved youth and the homeless children and the impoverished disproportionately non-white children in the ghettos of Oahu and Hawaii, Kalihi, Waianae, Central, Aiea, Palolo for the people that are in Hawaii. When she was like, not, I would say she's not like, you definitely got the sense of extreme deep anger, like extreme amazing levels of caring and sense of responsibility, but deep anger, legitimate anger, obviously. Why the fuck do I have to take care of all of these forgotten children in this waste dump where half the population lives in a cardboard box or lives 20 to a house and eats ramen for dinner? Why do I have to take care of fucking 50 kids? 50 kids, my grandkids and other abandoned grandkids. Why are all the dads all in fucking prison? Why are all the Hawaiian and the Filipino, the ones who didn't sell out to white supremacy and be white inside coconuts? Why am I taking care of all of their bare dads' kids? Why am I picking up all the pieces? Why am I over here, myself and a handful of other people like me, having to lobby for there to be any water in Mayor Wright's housing in Kuhio Park Terrace, right? Which there wasn't. There's no warm water at all. And the water that came out is still boil water advisory kind of water. Why am I over here where we have these kids sleeping in tents up and down the street where the tour buses don't take you when you come for your pina coladas and your white sand beach Hawaii tours, right? And it's like there's an extreme like anger, which is like legit, and it's like it's all legitimate, and so when she would reprimand the kid, like the kids like knew what was up. Like, you didn't mess with auntie. Nobody messed with auntie, but there's also like a respect because they all knew like she was the one that was picking up the pieces for everyone who disappeared, who fell down, and for the people inside the community who fell down, and for the colonizers who crushed everyone and shoved them into the gutter in Hawaii, right? And so all the kids are like, when she said you clean up your goldfish cracker dust you spilled, the kids cleaned it up. Usually, she liked me because, I mean, I didn't really get it till like way later, I think, but I think like, it's like Holly and every other people, I kind of explain it. I mean, I don't want to be like, oh, Silver Spoon's the best thing since sliced bread. No, I'm like, all kind of bullshit problems. But, I always just assumed that like, it was like, it's unusual to expect women to do 2 to 10 times the work of men and to have control over women's appearances and bodies. That's always been like weird. I think part of it is because of my mom and like something weird about my, I internalized that it's unfair. That stuff is just unfair. But I didn't realize till later that most dudes, like 90 to 95% of dudes, even in my own generation, think that they're just like entitled to house, career, wealth, and just whatever the fuck they want. And, I'm like, oh, what? Holy shit, there are a lot of really shitty fucking dudes around. That's why I did a bunch of streams about that. I have to say that, like, not to just be like dudes bad, not necessarily, but it's just like, that's like normalized in a patriarchal culture. And then it really hit me till like later. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that is normal. But I mean, and I didn't realize like, the aunties, the women, the aunties that were like I was working with the aunties who like maintained the C-base competency-based diploma program. So they're working with, I was a teacher, high school dropouts, right? 16 to 21-year-olds. A lot of them have criminal records. The majority of the teen women that were in the girls were like 16 and pregnant. Again, Pacific Islander, not white. That's the one student I work with, well, more than one, who were professional car thieves, right? They would talk about the Audis that they stole. I'm like, hey, don't talk about the Audi that you stole and how, I can get, 200 for this hubcap and it, I remember having to teach multiplication I had a professional car thief who was struggling with like multi-digit multiplication. I go, you know how to multiply because you just told me about how much the Mercedes and the Audis that you stole last weekend would be worth if you added up all the car parts. So do that. And I was like teaching multiplication to professional car thieves so they could pass a competency-based high school diploma program by adding up all of the car part sales and then dividing that by 4 to get the average monthly, trying to teach like mean, all the stuff you have to learn in school, right? That they didn't learn because Hawaii also has the worst schools in the so-called United States. And everything else I just told you. And it was like, so, I mean, and that's what Neofeud's about. It's about 30 of my kids. I would have 30 kids like Protege. Neofeud's about it. The main character is a cyborg social worker for at-risk sentient machine dropouts and half human, half wolf, wannabe, reality TV stars who are 16 and pregnant. And, but anyway, so it's kind of like, the people, I don't know, I'm so much in that world already. I gotta end this stream. It's like 12:57. But so, but it's kind of like, it's like it has never been fair that women have had to pick up so much for the dudes and the men, and sometimes unfortunately other women that don't support their fellow women, like TERFs and the other ones, and etc. And it's complicated even, and it's even worse when it comes to indigenous women and black women and non-white women. And it's different, but but it's never been fair. And it's like, part of it is like, that auntie that was the ancestress and all of her ancestresses that have had to pick up for the last 4 generations since the U.S. over the illegal occupation of Hawaii, ghettoization of our people, and since contact with Europeans and forced Christianization and putting up a Union Jack in our flag just to survive as a nation, right? Which is what Hawaii did, right? The Emmas, and the ancestress who was the mother of universal healthcare, Emma Kalani Kamaka Kaleleo Nalani Na'ea Rook, who had to go on foot to raise money, walking up and down the streets of Honolulu where I worked, right? She walked those same streets on her feet to raise money to start the world's first universal healthcare system in Hawaii. Queens Medical Center, 1859. Predating Karl Marx's Das Kapital by 8 years. So she was carrying for her community in a similar way to how the auntie was carrying all of the hurt and the trauma and the pain and holding together the pieces of her community. And that's not fair. That shouldn't be how it is. And that's always been like, in the same way that's like, when Holly once said to me, like, is it okay? Would you be okay with it? I'm just thinking about maybe I might shave my head. And I didn't really have to think about it. I was like, why? I'd be like, that's your head. Why does what I think about your head have any impact of what you do with your head? It just, I don't know why I didn't. Because Holly was like, no, that's not normal. 95% of dudes, including in Hawaii too. Unfortunately, a lot of them, not all, but the majority. That it is normal to have possession of the appearance in a cis couple. It's normal to have possession of the appearance of your wife. But to me, I don't know why. I couldn't tell you. I'm not saying like I'm some kind of perfect person, but it's like the tendency to be like that's not right, right? Is like, it's in the same way that's not right. It's also not right that women should have to carry all this burden. Even Holly was like, oh, Silver Spoon, you're going to have a panel, and I'm like, you don't have to be there for every event that I do, because other people's emotional states, other people's events, other people's channels, other people's baggage, other people's messes should not be your responsibility. I know that Christian conservative Canadian culture has like socialized you. I realize it now. I didn't know that till very recently. Has socialized you to want to pick up and clean up when a man is having a hard time. You have to give him emotional labor and support. But when you have a hard time, you just eat it as a woman. But I'm like, you don't have to do it. So I'm like, it's just like, That's a thing that like so many people don't even recognize, and I'm just trying to like talk about that. And then there's another level of that in the indigenous society where there is like even more suffering and crushing and oppression and trauma to clean up. There's just a bigger mess to clean up. I mean, just being white in America or Canada, it's not necessarily going to be good. But when you're an indigenous or black inside of capitalism, inside of colonization, it's a whole nother level of messes to clean up. You know what I'm saying? So like, you know, and so, but it can be hard because you're expected in both white culture and indigenous culture, there is still an expectation that you're going to clean it up though. When there's work to do, you're going to do that work and you're not going to say anything. Right. And like the impetus, that's the caring impetus to be like, but I need to do that and I want to do that. It's not bad. It's not bad to care. Right. But major part of that episode is like, look at all of the trauma for all of the women before you. They have all gone through this. Number one, you're not alone in like being lost with all of this mess to clean up and being expected to clean it up. Like, we have gone through the Trail of Tears. We have gone through the genocide. We watched our own children, you know, suffer and be ripped from our arms in the beginning, and it was still happening. But you know, we you know, and you know, you're you know, you're part of this line of historical trauma and the people that have tried to hold the things together for centuries, despite the onslaught of the last 500 years. And so, and also, like Daniel's mom was like, you know, you have to eventually realize that you, like, because Willie Jack is, how do I help my friends? How do I help my friends? I know I have to help them. I have to help them because they need help, but I don't know how to help them. And Daniel's mom's like, you know, I had to realize that, like, when I was trying to help my son who was deeply troubled, I did care. I wanted to help him. I really wanted to help him, but he was not being helped. He was not being helped. And I forwent my other responsibilities to put all my energy into helping Daniel, but he didn't want to be helped. And so it was such a hard lesson for me to learn that people who don't want to be helped cannot be helped. They might need that help. They might really need that help. But if they don't actually want to be helped, or they're not capable for whatever reason of accepting that help and getting helped, you can throw all your energy into that caring, and it will drain everything and it will hurt everyone else around, because you've hurt yourself and everyone around trying to help the person that doesn't want to actually be helped. Right. And so, like, and that's a whole other thing for that, where it's like, you know, because obviously, like, that's not to say like, oh, so what you do is just don't help people. No, it's like, but if people are like not going to reciprocate and like or be able and capable, either willing, capable, unwilling, incapable, or both, you can throw all your energy in trying to clean up a mess. And if they just keep making that mess over and over, you eventually have to allow that person to go, you know? And that sounds like well, that's easy. No, that's like not. Especially if you're someone who's trained to, like, you have to clean up that mess. You have to clean up that mess. You have to fix that person's emotional state. You have to fix that person. Look how much they're suffering. But it's like, if they actually don't want it, then you have to, like, let it go. And that's part of the thing. That's like, that's why I'm here. That's part of why I'm here in this place. Because I couldn't deal with it. And so I hurt myself and I hurt my community trying to help the unhelpable person. Or I didn't figure it out until it's too late. So anyway, there's like a lot of things happening there. And like, it's like one of the most intense episode. It's probably the most intense episode. But, you know, it's like, anyways, so there's a lot to say there, but I'm kind of saying the same thing several times and I got to go. Yeah, it's 10:05. Anyways, I know that's like, it's really heavy stuff, but, you know, it was really heavy, for me, obviously, and also for Holly when we were watching it. And, you know, but it's also like, you know, like, you know, as a person who is the healing person, you know, you have to understand that you are part of a history of the people who have survived. And that's another thing that makes this part really real. There's a lot of shows, you know, I mean, harkening back, we can go back to I did one about, you know, what the fuck is his name? Dream, Dream, Dream from Sandman. He's a sad boy. Dream from Sandman. He's a sad boy. Edward Cullen. Obi-Wan Kenobi is, he's a sad boy. These are imaginary people who are like having problems in their worlds, and it's not like that their problems are illegitimate. Like Dream doesn't have all of his kingdom and all of his followers and all of his power and his jewels and his magic sand he doesn't have it all, but he's just like really sad, and then and it's imaginary, or like, the British Queen is dead and we're all very sad, aren't we? No, she actually didn't have a lot of problems. The British Queen lived decades longer than the average black person in Britain, and even more decades longer than the average African person in Africa or Asia or her Anglo-Saxon colonies. So why are we shedding all of these tears for these people who didn't really suffer actual suffering? I mean, yeah, they're not here, but why are millions of people around the world, in Britain, the United States, weeping, including Stephen Fry, famous actor, right? And it's like this scene, but it's always hollow, especially for an indigenous person like myself. But this scene is like, unlike this, when we're crying for Black Hawk Down and how bad the Vietnam War made our American soldiers feel, which is, I'm not saying that they had a good time there and they didn't also suffer, but who suffered more, the United States soldier or the Vietnamese people who had their entire villages, their families, and everything, and their entire neighborhoods and country bombed into the Stone Age, right? Who fought on the right side of history to stop the capitalism that's destroying us and the planet? Who fought? Was it the United States? Right? Who in the United States? Is it the sad white man who doesn't know if he's gonna should he marry his high school sweetheart or keep on cheating on his wife with the mistress in the Mad Men office? Right? Is that what we should be crying about? The Sandman of the world, the Queen of England of the world, the imperialist soldier of the world, who comes back to a town? Or is it like the centuries upon centuries of suffering and pain and genocide and trauma that every single one of the various indigenous people and women in particular, all of Willie Jack's ancestors and all of our ancestors that have tried to fight on the right side of human history and all of the planet's history for 5 centuries, despite the trails of tears, despite the genocide, despite the stealing of the children, despite all of the poisoned water now and prior, despite the stolen land, despite the banned languages, right? And this scene is like, remember that history is what the legacy of that history of the people who have actually held together this the messes caused by the young race that have come over and our own internal re-traumatizations, right? They're all here with you, and that's why it's like that scene. This scene is amazingly powerful because it's also you're seeing on screen the actual reality for once. You're actually not like crying for the babies thrown out of an incubator in Iraq to start a war. Not like crying for a dead feudalist, multi-billionaire capitalist lich like the Queen of England. You're actually, crying because of the suffering and the struggle of the actual earth, the real struggle. But most TV shows is all bullshit. It's crying for cops. It's crying for how sad it is that my American soldier got shot. It's crying for how sad is it that I'm white in America and I didn't make enough money. Even my healthcare, please. I mean, yeah. People should have healthcare. Right? For you in your little fucking suburb. Like, so that's why this show is, it's so important. It's very, now of course, I mean, you could take that with a grain of salt. Well, Silver Spook, what are you? You're just some Native Hawaiian who worked in the poorest place, in the most racist, the most police murdered, the most incarcerated place in the United States. What do you know about suffering? What do you know about suffering? I'm a white man, and that's hard. It's hard to have the burden of, choosing what to do with all of the world's resources. That's hard, um. Anyways, I gotta stop. But Glenn Ford said about why it's hard to love black people because you have love, then through the pain and suffering they go through and experience. I'm being facetious since I'm being sardonic, or I don't know what the word is. I'm being not being disingenuous, but I'm joking. Anyways, I should probably end, but I know that's like super. That's not like the best place to end it. That's super heavy stuff. But that episode is very heavy. But I recommend you watch the entire show. I know Big Teal has watched the show. We watched the show. I think a lot of people, you will, even if you are an indigenous person or you're not, if you're whoever you are, there's a lot to be got from the show. You might be like, I don't even know any indigenous people or black people. I'm a wasp from upstate New York. I don't know anything. I mean, even then, even more so, you should watch the show, right? Even you might not get everything, but it will expose you to a lot of. It humanizes and gives a multi-dimensional representation of the majority of the earth who are indigenous people, right? To one place or another, who are not originally Euro settler colonizers or colonizers. So, but in particular, it gives visibility of the real life from their perspective of native people from, Native Americans or indigenous people of Turtle Island. Anyways, I just wanted to say what's up, Stern Sam, but good to see you as well. But anyway, thanks a lot to everybody for watching. I do have to get out of here because I got to go eat some food and I got to go do the panel. Don't forget, we're going to have another panel. Not on this channel. It's on the Luna Oi Twitch channel and the YouTube channel. The West from BIPOC Perspectives. So don't forget, that's coming up soon. Lost Sue is going to be there. So I think Lost Sue is always ready to go. Luna, Lost Sue, Saber. Oh my goodness, I kind of like messed my name. That's all right. Nobody can see it. But yeah, thanks a lot to Holly for moderating. Good to see Big Teal and Strin and everyone else. I'm sorry I don't look at the chat all the time, but I'm distracted. I distract myself as it is enough. If I were to look at even more things, the stream would take 26 hours. So anyways, don't forget, Neofeud is a cyberpunk adventure game. If you just hear it for the cyberpunk stuff, you're like, Silver Street, what are you talking about? I just want like sentient robots and like, I want like a ninja blade coming out of my arm. Then like Neofeud is a cyberpunk adventure game but Neofeud on another level is also about that topic of it's not as overt, but it is about the experiences of indigenous people. This scene, I just posted it. This is a scene from Neofeud where there is a character who says, you scored a conscious. This is somebody who is trying to get, it's like when you go trying to get your disability benefits, you go to the government welfare office to get, your Section 8 or your food stamps or whatever. You're just trying to get some help. You're trying to get your tax rebate, right? You scored a consciousness quotient of 3.9. You qualify as a pet or livestock, however, not sentient enough to be considered a person. So this scene is like a thing that's experienced. Like, as a Native Hawaiian, I was told there should be no Native Hawaiian homeless people. And then they said, we have this program. It's called Hawaiian Homesteads that the state of Hawaii will help you get into a home. By the way, the waiting list doesn't open up for 10 years, and the people who are on it wait 70 years to get a home. And statistically, the number of Native Hawaiians that are housed is dropping every year. So it's kind of, this is like the experience of being under-resourced. And of course, just disproportionately, if you're indigenous or you're non-white, you're going to be more under-resourced on average. And so that's what this scene is. This is a scene from Neofeud, but of course, it's like, there's like robots, and then there's half human, half animal hybrids, and there's time travel and fun stuff. Otherwise, nobody would play my games. So don't forget, Neofeud is a game that's on Steam and it's on itch.io. And it's also a game that, if you leave even a very short review, it is massively appreciated. Check out Stray. Stray is a game about a cat that's like Neofeud, except Neofeud is not cat protagonist. It's like Disco Elysium, but more cyberpunk. Also, as I said earlier, you can get all the games on itch. Fuck, I'm like too late. I should have got it earlier. I'm gonna blast through this. You can get Neofeud on itch.io. I'm gonna chalk it up to spiralic temporality. My mouth talks in spiralic temporality, and that's why I get myself into these temporal difficulties. You can get Decolonators, which is about kicking capitalist colonizer butts out of Vietnam. You can get Indigestar, which I already talked about, and it's about it's a sequel to Neofeud, and it's also a game about resisting colonization as an indigenous people from a science fictional worldview in a science fictional game. You can follow me at Silverspoon Games at Mastodon.social, at Silverspoon Games at Octodon.social, which is like Twitter, but it's open source. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Silverspoon Guy, at Silverspoon Games for the games related stuff. Follow me on Instagram at Silverspook, and on Facebook at Silverspook Games. I'm sorry, I got so many different names. Hawaiians had a lot of different names, so I just continuing that tradition. No, that's just a cop out. Silverspoon Games on Facebook, and you can also follow Terminus C for Terminus Cyberstar, a low poly cyberpunk immersive sim in the vein of late 90s games like Deus Ex and System Shock. This game is nearly completed, with the exception of the optimization and the content testing. And don't forget, you can also follow, of course, Holly, my partner, Mod VA, and partner partner in Silverspoon Games, as well as in marriage and having the children's, and mod producer and writer for Xanattack, the haunted hostess of the lounge, every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Holly is also Eastern time. Holly's also writing, like I showed. Holly is also a writer of books like Woman, which is a book about by Holly raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and it is a kind of dunking on right-wing Protestant Christianity, in the short story from the perspective of Mary from the Bible. Also, Holly is, of course, administrating and also cleaning up all the messes, including when I drop my socks and spill all of my Rain and Rockstar cans on the ground. And so we are greatly appreciative of that, losing my mind and my socks at the same time, and then Holly finds them. But anyway, I have to. Anyways, thanks a lot to Holly and all the very important work that Holly does, as well as keeping the important information up there like this. So don't forget. Also, thanks to all these people for all of your support. It really is massively appreciated. We cannot do this work without the support of the Patreon patrons. Even more so now as times become more tough. We really do appreciate all of the support that all these people will continue to give financially, because electricity and that we stream on, the housing, the transportation, all the bills, the material things don't exist, and there's no streams, there's no games, there's no panels without all of these very important people. So thank you so much from all of us, and yes, I gotta go. Big Teal, one day you will get a Holly in your life. You can order your very own Holly, $36,000. Hashtag don't worry, darling. I'll give you a step for. No, I'm just kidding. There's only one Holly. I'm sorry, but you one day, I hope you will find a Holly for your life. And thanks a lot, Big Teal. Thanks a lot again. And now, we are going to be signing out. And why am I losing the off button? Keep your marriage plus, be excellent to each other. Mahalo for watching, and watch Reservation Dogs. Congratulations on it getting greenlit for season 3. Let's make it get greenlit for season 4.